Hey guys, welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and spending some of your day with me. And guys, today this is going to be a broad-ranging topic. I want to talk about the fact that there's one thing, actually there's two things, that bass fishing is never going to come back from, or it would be next to impossible unless some very difficult decisions are made. But I want to do videos like this, guys. One of the things about it, you can't ever get in the position in the sport of bass fishing where all you care about is you catching more fish. It's like that is a very short-sighted, selfish viewpoint on fishing. If you get into fishing in 2026, you have got to realize that we all have a responsibility to hand the sport off better than we found it to the next generation. And right now we don't. I mean, there's no motivation that I see on the horizon that leads to that. So I want to dig into that in today's video about the two things that we just cannot come back from here. Also, guys, quick reminder, you probably heard me talking about it. I'm getting ready to launch a live stream on Intuitive Angling here, probably about a weekly or week and a half, every week and a half, something like that. This is going to be a private live stream for my channel members and my Patreon members, where we can get on there and talk about stuff that we can't talk about in public. Just sort of a behind the scenes type of a deal, personal interaction type thing. So if you're interested, guys, all you got to do is become an Intuitive Angling channel member. Just go to my homepage, click the join button for information. Got a bunch of different levels there, or join my Patreon program, which is the links in the description of the video here. So I really appreciate that. Okay, two things, guys. There's two things that are happening that in bass fishing that I don't know if we're going to be able to come back from, and that is loss of habitat in our lakes across the country, and that is explosion in bass fishing technology, or technology that's being used in fishing. Those are the two things about it I want to dig into. But first of all, it all has to do with leadership that we are lacking. One of the things about it, guys, over the past year or so, I have never seen in our country about the lack of leadership that we have right now. We do not have the best people in positions of power. We have a lot of, I don't care if it's in politics or if it's business or if it's in bass fishing, we have a lot of people that have no business being in positions of power. They don't have the intellect, they don't have the scientific critical thinking skills to do so. Don't assume just because somebody's in a position of power in any aspect of our life that they're the best people, because they're not. And we have seen that evident in every part of our society right now, that we have poor leadership from the top to the bottom. So especially in bass fishing, one of the things about bass fishing is we have had the past 5 years, and I'm not saying everybody in the sport, because there are some isolated exceptions to the rule about some exceptional leaders in the sport, but overall the big drivers in the sport of bass fishing are led by people that have no business being there in terms of the sustainability of the sport. And there's two things with that I don't think, unless we have somebody that accepts that responsibility, that I don't know if we're going to come back for it. And let's talk about those two that I mentioned. It's about the loss of habitat, and the technology that's being it's destroying the sport right now. First of all, habitat. I've been digging into this for a while here. Bass themselves, an adult full-grown bass is a very adaptable creature, and they can survive in a lot of adversity. So a lot of the adversity that you see now in terms of water quality issues and habitat loss and stuff like that, it's not affecting the full-grown bass, but what it does, it affects the smaller part of the food chain, specifically like the bass fry, the bass eggs, the whole ecosystem that feeds young bass, whether it be from the zooplankton to the algae to the little microscopic shrimps to the minnows to the perch. The whole food chain is affected by habitat loss, because habitat is necessary to protect that more delicate, smaller part of the food chain. And the problem we've had in our lakes across the country is we've had tremendous amount of habitat loss that is attributed to man primarily. That habitat loss, it depends on the part of the country you're in. For example, if you guys are in Florida or areas that have aquatic vegetation, you guys have seen the devastation that the inept, ignorant people in positions of power allow aquatic herbicide and chemicals to be sprayed on our water. I am completely convinced, guys, that there's some type of a grease in the palm situation between these chemical companies and the people that allow them to be sprayed in our lake. There's no other explanation to that. When you have the complete ignorance of somebody that thinks it's okay to spray herbicide and chemicals on our sensitive ecosystem that's going to kill that food chain just to knock back some grass so some dock owner doesn't bitch about it, that is a recipe for disaster, and it's not stopping. And again, it leads back to money. Everything that I'm talking about here, guys, I don't care if it's with politics, and I've seen it here in our own local politics in Springfield, Missouri. I don't care if it's with chemical companies spraying aquatic vegetation. It all goes back to freaking money and the love of money and how money corrupts and how power corrupts. You can trace it back to every single time to that part of it. The next part of it is like the tremendous amount of loss of habitat, even in non-grass lakes, because I can tell you right now from fishing lakes all across the country, guys, we've seen a tremendous amount of habitat loss in just the traditional hard type structures. We have, siltation going on in a lot of lakes across the country. We have, timber and stuff is rotting out. The biggest problem that I see is real estate developers. You've got these real estate developers that don't give a crap about the health of the lake. All they want to do is build multi-million dollar, homes by tearing off hillsides for, people that come to the lake 2 times a year. So in their multi-million dollar hilltop, houses or condos, and the habitat loss from like ripping out shoreline structure, for houses, the fertilizers that come in from the lawns that are on the lakes, everything that's associated with development is a negative to bass fishing because again, it interrupts and disturbs the ecosystem. The turbidity issues that are caused by all this stuff, different type of water quality issues, this stuff just doesn't go away. And it affects bass behavior and movement, because what you have is when you have habitat loss, I don't care if it's like, on a grass lake or a non-grass lake, when you have any element of habitat loss, it threatens that complete food chain. And not only that, but it changes the behavior of the bass. Because as you have habitat loss, and I've seen this in the lakes here in the Ozarks, guys, when you have habitat loss, number one is it makes bass roam more. It makes bass suspend more, and it makes bass harder to catch with those three, aspects of habitat loss. I'll give you guys I'll give you 2 examples here in my part of the country, Grand Lake, Oklahoma, and Table Rock Lake in Missouri. It's like I have seen the past 10 years down at Table Rock Lake where the bass that are traditionally located around some type of, hard structures or some type of shoreline cover at Table Rock Lake, those fish are gone and they have turned into roamers and they live out in open water. It's completely changed their behavior, and they've gotten more difficult to catch as a result of that habitat loss. Another example, I've talked about this before down at Grand Lake. Those stupid real estate developers down at Grand Lake have went into a lot of these areas that they're flatter type banks that are normally not real conducive to building on, because the slope of the bank and the vegetation, the angles, and what they've done is they go in there, take a bulldozer, and they bulldozed out just, I don't know how many hundreds of acres, or, probably thousands now, of shoreline habitat, willow trees, buckbrushes, shallow water cover that is there for when the water comes up to provide, not only ambush points for predator fish, but it provides places to hide for bait fish and fry and perch and that type of stuff, and they're destroying the habitat. And as a result, you've seen the degradation of fishing in both of those fisheries across the country. So you can't ever get, past that habitat loss that's going on across the country. You cannot come back from that once you get to a certain point where you disrupt the food chain. And the next one we'll talk about, and we've talked about this a lot, and you can't ever normalize it, guys, is the freaking explosion in technology and fishing. One of the things that there's a segment of the population of the people that simply can't grasp or understand is that technology is not a positive in bass fishing. There are some things in our society where technology is excellent. The field of medicine and science and that type of stuff, things that really benefit the human condition. Those things can be a positive. But when you talk about bass fishing has no place for technology because it goes against everything what bass fishing is. It's the same with hunting and fishing have no place for technology. But the problem that you have in this, and it's the problem that we have in our broken political system right now, is when you get people in positions of power that can authorize like technology or fishing or whatever, and there's money to be made in it, that is where the corruption and that is where everything gets broken. Because when you have money that begins to influence the sport of bass fishing, that enables technology to take over the sport, that is when you've reached a precipice that you can't come back from. And there's not one single thing that technology, specifically we're talking about electronic technology and bass fishing, has added positive to the sport. Nothing. People say, well, Randy, it's great, it's bringing more people into the sport, and it's making it easier to catch fish. That's not a positive. It's not our responsibility to provide people with shortcuts to success, and bass fishing's growing just fine as it is. It doesn't need technology to make it grow more because it diminishes the experience. There are some things in life that accentuate experiences, and there's some things that diminish it. And the big illusion is that technology has somehow added a positive into our sport because it makes people feel better. And it's no different than drugs. It's like people will take drugs to escape reality and to feel better and to alter the reality and to whatever. And it's the same with technology and bass fishing, forward-facing sonar technology. Sonar, that it's a crutch, it's a drug, it's something that's not real. It diminishes, it takes away from the sport. There's no value to that whatsoever and perpetuating it in that sport. But again, it goes back to leadership, guys. We have got inept leaders in the sport of bass fishing for the most part right now. I don't want to say that as a blanket statement, because there are some exceptions to the rule. There are some exceptional leaders out there, but the vast majority of the power brokers in bass fishing right now that have the ability to affect change are simply inept. They're in over their head. They don't know what they're doing. They're motivated by other aspects. They're motivated by whatever levels of power and profit, or they treat it as a business, like a for-profit business model. And you can't do that in bass fishing. Bass fishing is not something that should be the future of the sport should not be based on a for-profit model of how big your profit margin can be. There's got to be people in positions of power within this industry that have ethics and integrity to do the right thing, even if it's not the most financially beneficial thing. And I don't know, guys. I just don't have a real good feel about it, man. We are in a really weird spot right now in a lot of different aspects of our country in terms of leadership. And I don't know, maybe it's a cycle we go through. Maybe we have to fall on our butts in order to wake up. Because one thing I can tell you about humans, guys, is humans, for the most part, they will not do the right thing until they are absolutely forced to do the right thing. I don't care, again, if it's every facet of our society, and that's lazy and short-sighted. So anyway, guys, I have this fantasy all the time about winning the lottery, winning one of those. You see once in a while that lottery gets up to $1.5 billion, and some it's usually some 75-year-old grandma from New Jersey that wins it or something like that. If I was ever to win that, which I got to start playing it before I can actually win, guys, I would completely change the landscape of the sport for the better. I mean, it would be there. Everything would be focused on the health and vibrancy and sustainability of the sport and returning it to the traditional norms and values that we've always had, that we've held dear in the sport. Because right now, guys, it is going down the toilet in a hurry. And you can stick your head in the sand about it, and you can deny the reality, and you can say, Randy, quit being so negative and quit bitching about everything. But you cannot affect change for the positive on anything unless you acknowledge the problem. And we have a problem right now in this sport where people will not stand up and acknowledge the problem, and it's all normalization, status quo, You know, everything's fine, technology is great, all this BS that is going to come back and bite us, and we are going to be looked on. This generation of leadership in bass fishing right now is going to be looked upon as some of the greatest villains in the sport in 20 or 30 years when they reflect back on the opportunities that we had and the directions that we had the choice to go to, and we all took the wrong path. Not all of us, but the sport, the leadership of the sport took it down the wrong path, which led to its demise. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Drop some comments, man. Let me know what you guys think. We'll check in later.